These pork chops absorb flavor like a sponge. The salty fish sauce with the garlic and lemongrass on that barbecue just chars perfectly. Vietnamese lemongrass pork chops. Hey guys, Jeremy here from School of Wok, London's premier Asian cookery school. Welcome back to Wok Wednesday. It's a wok less Wednesday, but we're on the barbie. Now these pork chops, you've got to have good quality pork chops. A good amount of fat around the edge. I'm just going to take the skin off first. And this dish, not really a dish, it's actually, in Vietnam, you'd have this with broken rice. So lots of different, it's almost like a buffet of food, where the pork chop for me is the main event. I do like to keep a layer of fat on the chop. And then what you do is just sort of score the meat a little, and this is to allow as much of that marinade in as possible on both sides. It's a really nice thick pork chop this, and got that lovely sort of bit of marbling all the way through. And then once you've scored the meat, then turn your cleaver around, hold it tight, you don't want to let go of it, and give it a good bash. This helps to tenderize the meat, but also just thins it out slightly, allowing as much of the marinade that I'm going to show you in a second to get into the meat. Now, I'm only going to concentrate on the pork chops and the flavor that we're going to sort of pound into this, because it's layers of flavor. In lemongrass, you want to bash and really nicely finely chop up. I'm going to pop that straight into the pestle and mortar. You don't have to, but I quite like to sort of grind the lemongrass so it's not too fibrous. Garlic, finely chopped. Plenty of garlic. I've got about 5 cloves here. I'm going to add a whole load of ingredients to the garlic and lemongrass, and then sort of bring it all together for this marinade. Add some 5 spice, a pinch of salt. Not too much, because we've got quite a lot of salty ingredients going into this anyway. Some light soy sauce, and then a similar amount of fish sauce. That's for that salty flavour. I'm just sort of creating a bit of a paste out of this as I go. Palm sugar. You want a nice balance of sweet and salty. If you can't find palm sugar, then you can swap it out with some soft brown sugar, or even a bit of honey. As soon as that palm sugar goes in there, you know this is going to taste good. Oyster sauce. Not too much. And then I've got half a red onion here. I've left this till last because I didn't want to pound it in. I just want some nice sort of flavour from the red onion. So it's just slices will do. And they can go straight over the pork chops before I then spoon this marinade over the top. And then you just want to make sure that that marinade gets well sort of massaged round. You know, it's just the right amount of marinade for 2 pork chops this. So if you were going to do more than this, then just double it up in quantity. You want it to be sort of flavourful, but not too sort of thick at this point, because I've got a glaze that's going to go over the top whilst I'm barbecuing it. Now, ideally, you leave that to sit in the marinade for at least an hour or overnight to get as much flavour into the pork as possible. Oh, I'm excited. For the glaze, I've got a bit more oyster sauce. And this is why that marinade is actually relatively thin, or not too much of it, so that I've got enough sort of space to be able to glaze this and add more flavour as we go. Some light soy sauce. Both those 2 ingredients are quite salty, so we're going to sweeten that up with some honey. But whether you're going to put this on a griddle or, as I'm going to cook today, on the barbecue, honey and sugar will caramelise very quickly, so you don't want it to be too thick. I'm going to thin this out in a second. Got some tamarind concentrate here, which again is also quite thick. So right now, this glaze is on the sort of thicker side, and especially with that honey in there, it will be prone to sort of caramelizing and charring very quickly. So I'm going to thin this out with some water, and then I'll use it to glaze the pork as and when on the barbecue. Right, it's a beautiful day, so I couldn't resist getting coals on. But if you wanted to, you could sear this on a frying pan or on a griddle pan indoors. It'll be absolutely fine. I'm going to cook it on the barbecue. Now these onions will taste good when cooked, but before you sear the pork for the first time, I'd recommend taking this sort of large bits of onion off the pieces of pork. And the reason for that is I don't want them to burn and almost sort of guard the pork from getting that lovely char. I'm just going to get the fat on and hold it there for a second, just whilst the flame's in a good place. Oh, I love that sizzling sound. Never lose your sizzle, guys. That's all part of the excitement of cooking on any sort of fire, whether it's a wok or searing on the barbecue like this. And then I'm just going to let that down. Of course, I won't waste any of this onion. We'll sort of layer it onto the, or into the glaze in a second. As I say, all this onion can go into the glaze. I've got the glaze in my saucepan on top of the fire there, and that should come to boil relatively quickly. Let that cook. That's going to sear and cook through nicely for about 5 minutes. So once you've had about sort of 4 or 5 minutes on either side, then you want to start adding the glaze to your pork. And I find the easiest way to do this, rather than sort of brushing too much, is just dipping it in this sort of hot bubbling glaze and then whacking it back on the barbecue. You want to do that sort of 2 or 3 times whilst you're finishing it off, and this honey in that glaze is going to sort of caramelize quite quickly. And at this point, on the last sort of round of glazing, I'm going to get the onions back onto the pork, and with this barbecue I can close it up, give it another minute, and then that pork's ready. You've got this lovely char on that pork, a little sear from the onions. Let that sit for 2-3 minutes just to rest, relax a little, and then you can slice it up. Lovely sort of juicy bits of meat, just to sort of show you guys. And when you're cooking pork, you don't want it to overcook, because it can get dry quite quickly. No more than 10 minutes total, but 8 to 4 or 5 minutes on either side is plenty, and that glaze is a lovely consistency. And of course, all I got to do now is taste this. The char around the edge of the fat is great, and the fattiness itself is perfectly balanced. I love dishes like this. Actually really easy to make. Once it's in the fridge marinating, and get the charcoal on, and it does its thing. If you want to learn more, you like recipes like this, whether it's on the barbecue, on the wok, on fire, we love that type of cooking. Hope you do too. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, ding, hit that notification bell, and eat more pork.